So you might remember my video on sweaty nerds. In it, I mentioned that war is a lot more complicated than the battles fought and the generals who won them. I mentioned that there are several layers to warfighting. Each layer is a sort of scope, what level of detail you're looking at, how zoomed in you are. The tactical level is the one that would perhaps be described as the most zoomed in. This level is closest to the actions of individual soldiers and squads. Squad 1 takes position in House 7, which allows them a firing position on enemy Squad A, we'll say. And because of that squad's actions, Squads 1 through 6 were able to advance into the town, and so on and so on. Once in the town, these 7 squads did these and these things that pushed the enemy back to this sort of this street in the town. To put it simply, it's what individuals are doing in an individual part of an individual battle. If it's a small battle, it's possible you could be seeing the whole sort of, I guess, confrontation from the tactical level. And the reason for that is because small battles have very few units involved, and upper command is also not very involved, if at all. Referring to something this small as a battle might be a bit much. These kinds of things are going to be like patrols being ambushed, or, marching, you get ambushed again. Generally, these kinds of things are spontaneous, because obviously upper command is interested in making every battle go as best as it can. So if they're not involved, it's because they didn't know to be involved. The next level, the next zooming out, is called the operational level, where the tactical level looked at squads, which are groupings of individual people. This level will look at what squads comprise, the larger control elements. Things like companies, regiments, I suppose. I'm not terribly versed in the technicalities of military terminology, but generally speaking, the grouping of groups. As the name operational level suggests, we are looking at one operation, one course of action that the army has decided to take. So an operation's goal might be, say, a X region in Europe needs to be taken in order for troops to be able to move to the next place in order to continue the war effort properly. And so at the operational level, we are looking at the plan, obviously, of the whole operation and the forces needed to perform that plan. You'll plan what groups do what, and in turn, those groups will decide what their individual soldiers do at the tactical level. So you might have a decision like groups 1, 2, and 3 will take this town over here, and groups 4 will take the bridge on the side of the town in order for you to continue forward to take the next town in order to take this and that. And what those groups do there, that's the tactical level. That'll look something like the example I gave above. They'll basically decide the specifics, the nitty-gritty details of what needs to happen in order for the order or command to be fulfilled. Obviously, I've oversimplified things. The people in charge of the operation are going to try to plan as much as possible in as much detail as possible. But the nature of war is inherently chaotic. So it's entirely necessary to have a chain of command in order to be able to more dynamically approach these kinds of pop-up problems, these things you never expected. The next zoom out is the strategic level, where you're going to be looking at most of, if not all, of the army. Similar to the operational level, you are controlling groups of groups, the commanders of other commanders. At this level, you're making the decisions that need to be taken in order to win the whole war. You're basically deciding what operations need to happen in order to make victory happen. The next level is the grand strategy level. Not every war will have this level, but the most significant ones will. At this level, you'll be deciding how the entire nation and all her components are going to be used to win the war. At this level, you'll be designing your industrial and manufacturing capabilities in order to fuel the war effort. You'll be enacting different measures on the civilian population, like curfew, blackout, rations. You'll be dealing with things like spies and state-level diplomacy. This level only exists when your nation is in a total war, when the entire nation, civilian or military, is a target and a force in its endeavor. Now, this next thing is not a level like the other ones were, but it's definitely important to know because it is actually a component in how people fight war. It's called Doctrine, or War Doctrine, something like that. It's a generic, repetitive set of strategies for how you're going to approach and fight the war. They're created based on what your nation's strengths are and how those strengths can be exploited in order to win the war. The inverse can also be true, where you're trying to exploit the weaknesses of an enemy nation. So if you're a nation with a strong air force, you're going to try to find a way to make the Air Force do more in the war or in battle. Maybe you're a very mobile army. You've got a lot of fast tanks, where the enemy doesn't really have a good way of dealing with tanks. So you'll try to find a way to take advantage of the fact that your tanks are fast and they can't stop them. So you might have the tanks outmaneuver the enemy forces, maybe charge straight at them and force them to break their lines, and behind your tanks, you move up your troops, and they're not assailed nearly as badly because the tanks broke the enemy defensive line. You're going to try to use your best assets to the best of their abilities, and you're going to try to make that asset make a bigger difference in the war. You're going to organize how you use your other assets in order to emphasize the strength of your primary asset. All right. Now, with that out of the way, I want you to realize every war has these layers, has these components. This was the problem I wanted to deal with in the video that ultimately became a video about historical sources. Look at all these layers. Know that they exist in every war. Now, how much do you know about each layer in a given war that you can think of? If you look at the Second World War, we have lots of information about every layer of that war. We can see all the way from the top, plans of Hitler, plans of his generals, and we can see all the way down to what individual squads and even individual tanks were doing. Because of this vast and full knowledge that we have about the war, we can tell why pretty much most things happened. You know, every cause and effect that led to everything. It's a lot of stuff to know, but we have it, and that's what matters. So, when you leave the video today, I want you to know that if you don't have all the information for all the different layers, you either don't know enough, or we don't have the information. So if you're in class and being taught about some battle that happened 2 millennia ago, and all it mentions is the general in the battle, and maybe the tactic, then you know that you're being given a summation of what really happened in the war or the battle. An incomplete summation, a shallow summation at that. Because as I said, there is more to war than the battles fought and the generals who won them.